Welcome to the Stars Align Dramas and Dreams podcast, where the infinite sky meets the starry world of dramas. We're your guides through the cosmos, from heart-stopping queer love stories to straight dramas of unexpected love.
And every unforgettable moment in between that make us swoon, laugh, and cry. And, of course, we'll sprinkle in a little stardust along the way.
I'm Nixie.
I'm Cyrus.
Each week, we'll explore the stellar journey of love, identity, and connection, one drama and one dream at a time.
So, gather your stardust, find your spot under the stars, and let's dive in.
This week, we're casting our gaze upon morally gray characters, letting the stars guide us through the exciting and vast world it holds.
To start our exploration, we need to understand one thing. What are morally gray characters, and why do they matter?
So when it comes to morally gray characters, they are the type of characters that are neither good or bad. In most cases, they tend to be presented as these bad characters that eventually later the audience is given like this understanding that almost like kind of grays out their behavior, not necessarily like ignores it, but it puts them on that pedestal that makes you debate was what they did good or wrong. Good or bad, sorry.
One of the same. Morally gray characters in media are really important because they add to real life conversations about morality and how nothing in this world is truly fully black or white, fully right or wrong. And they often lead to the idea that good people can do bad things for good reasons and can still be either right or wrong depending on how they go about it. And I think that's really important when, especially, you're trying to figure out how you feel about certain issues. With the very basics kind of spoken, let's break down the constellation of morally gray characters, mapping out the stars that connect to reveal the deeper layers of meaning we're exploring.
To navigate this constellation, we'll be focusing on how context, conflict, and the audience impact morally gray characters.
We start our exploration with the influence of context and how it shifts perception. Here, we'll examine the heart of morally gray characters and explore how context is essential to understanding them. So often, with morally gray characters, how they're viewed by the end of the narrative is so often influenced by the context of why the character acts a certain way. What impacts the decisions they make.
The only thing I want to add is that it's so important for characters to even make a morally great character is to have that understanding, that context clue that guides the audience to let them even know what their thoughts were. So like their actions and their mindset of what they had done. And so it's extremely important, especially story plot drive as well, because because morally good characters do two things typically for a story, and that is to make it more human-like, because every human is set up, honestly, all humans are gray, to be honest with you. I mean, where they fall in the red flag or the green flag may play out a little differently in their personalities or how they do things, but technically, essential setup, everyone is gray. Everyone has their mindset, they have their actions, they have their past, they have what they intend to do with what has been reflected to them in like their personality and stuff like that, into their future actions, the cause and effect. And so there's that a character brings to the table for a story, but it also serves as, in a lot of cases, as the story plot driven reason that a story happens and why it is shaped the way it is. Because a lot of the times morally good characters are world perspective stories. They're like, gives you a new viewpoint of how people think, how people act. And so not having that context or having the conflict that is behind morally good characters kind of just defeats the purpose of morally great characters. It gives you a villain, in most cases a villain, without any substance. And I think that's something that is why morally gray characters are becoming more popularly used nowadays because
Mhm.
and why I think villains are on the rise for a lot of stories, especially in Chinese dramas and the wuxias, sorry, in the wuxias and the shanxias, they have a high rise of like the protagonist being actually antagonists. A lot of
Mhm.
times they're the demons, they're not the immortals. So it like, and a lot of the times we end up falling for those characters, for the villain characters, especially like in modern times right now, with all the popularity behind the villain characters,
Mhm.
because they have those backstories. They have like the substance that made you connect to them, that made you be like, oh my God, it wasn't good, but I understand why you did it. Like there are so many people that you can put on that pedestal that some people would want to be like, you go this way, and the other person, you go that way. So it's like, but that's such an important context to have for morally great characters.
Since real people and their real stories exist in a world of gray, I think it's really important to have a reflection of that gray, of that middle ground morally in any situation, to reflect as a way to allow people to feel comfortable in this gray. Because I think we live in a world where we've gotten to a point where everyone feels like they have to take a full stance on either side of a debate.
A black and white
And
world, and that's not what we live in.
mhm. Like they try to take black and white stances while being themselves gray.
It's not possible.
I don't know.
And it's not possible. And honestly,
Mhm.
if you notice, a lot of the most well loved literature and movies and series tend to be those who defy black and white. But
Yeah.
yet, as humans, we are very hypocritical. And even though there are lessons hidden in those morally gray areas of there's no such thing as black and white, there's really no such thing as good and evil. There's no way to define those things properly, especially from person to person. Everyone's opinion is completely different, and
Yeah.
so that's some of the leading profound stories tend to be those. But yet, like I said, humans just choose to not side with that. We choose to feel like we need to have that black and white, something that guides us right or wrong. But that's what, like I said, that's why morally gray characters exist. There's this reason behind them. There's so there's a
Mhm.
reason that that it's very important to understand that black and white, that gray for a reason. Like there's that middle ground between those two polar opposite contrasts of good and evil, black and white, right or wrong. And I don't know, that's why a morally character exists. Like I said, it's a worldly view. It's this perspective that people need to realize is a very much a possibility, very much a consideration in someone else's mind, or a thought that people never would have thought of. Oh, is that good or is that bad? Like something you actually have to consider. So very important. Context is extremely important for these morally gray characters and for people to understand.
Without the context of a character, like their choices and like what made them makes each of their choices is what feels in the gray from being completely on like the wrong side of a debate, on the wrong side of whatever situation they're in.
With that being said, we'll shift our orbits and find ourselves questioning how morally gray characters affect a story's conflict. This question will take us deeper into understanding morally gray characters by uncovering hidden connections and unfolding new layers. And I think
So
I've
that
stated this
movie,
before. Sorry. I was just saying, I think I've stated this before. A lot of morally gray characters are literally the main point of a storyline. It is literally drives the conflict in a story. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry, Cyrus.
like often, like some of our favorite characters are like the morally gray ones. because like
Sometimes people don't realize it, and some people don't realize they're morally gray.
they add so much
95%.
depth through a conflict or a story. There's so many good examples. Like literally 99% of the Untamed cast.
That's what I was just gonna say. That's what my 99%, the 90% was. Was that 90% of the Untamed was immorally gray. Like almost all of their efforts had a underlying different, like a meaning behind them, while simultaneously something about it was moral, but some of it wasn't. Like let's take Wei Wuxian for example.
That whole
Like
man.
that whole man's existence was morally gray. For starters, like, yes, I'll argue. I think he's one of the morally gray characters that, in most people's perspective, falls positively. But for the characters of the story, he falls negatively because of his ability, because of what he ends up taking on without a core
Yeah.
and the demonic core he took on. So Wei Wuxian ended up, even though he ended up sacrificing his core, which was a element that was later revealed to give like sympathy, to give like emotional connection to the for the audience and for the other characters around them, that he had given his core to Jing Qian, and for him to still need to live in a world where martial arts and your abilities to be strong is very important. So he had to turn to demonic cultivation because otherwise he was nothing in this world setup. He became nothing. And then there's the other setup that where he became a target, one because his demonic cultivation ended up being really strong. And he ended up doing very well at it, and he ended up achieving a lot that a lot of the sects didn't like. And so he becomes a more great character because in a lot of people's perspective, he also ends up becoming a target because he helped the Win clan and their survivors, which a lot of people view him on the good side because if you're a watcher, you're like, he did a good thing because he helped the survivors of people who honestly weren't the reason for what happened with the Winsec. And he helped what was their names? Like Winning
Ning
and
Wenqing
Winqing, yeah, and helped
and
them specifically.
Shizhui.
And so to a lot of people, his behavior, especially in the storyline, for the characters in the story, was very negative, outspoken. So like the only person that even stood beside him was Len Chen, but he missed his opportunity at the same time to stand beside him in the past version of him. And so he is a great character. And then you have the what our friend Cyrus loved, who you were like, this baby did nothing, absolutely nothing wrong.
I am nothing if not a Zhang Chang and Nui Hisong like defender. I love them with my entire being.
Only for people like, actually, he's an interesting character on his own
Yes.
because, yeah, because you have a crazy passion for your Wei song, and this character was like almost a baby throughout the entire series,
But he is not.
and he acted literally as he almost like he was oblivious to everything, only for it later to supposedly be revealed that he might have been the one behind it, which is actually a debate in the MXT in this lore that it just was coincidental that a lot of the things that happened weren't his actual plan, and it just just lined up and everything. But if so, that's crazy coincidence because a lot of things
Yeah.
lined out in his favor, even though he went for the long run and those coincidences happened over a long span of years. But they happened very well for him in the end. He got his revenge. He was like, he got what he wanted. But I know he's a pretty decent, big, kind of debated, like, morally gray character because he was in the shadows of his morally gray. And then you had the Two-Face, the one I was accidentally trying to say a second ago, which
Jingguang
sorry,
Yao.
yeah, it was Jing Long Yao. He like, oh my god, he was interesting to just watch because Jin Yao, because he, like I said, he was two-faced. he he tended to present himself to other characters in one way, which is a lot nicer and presenting, and then turned around to have like his actual motives to like do his crimes and stuff like that. And so like you said, 90% of the Untamed was pretty much morally gray and the things they did. But like moving back to other series outside of those, and I'm gonna have to say is a lot of wuxias and those kind of series tend to be a lot of morally gray. Like I don't think you often escape those dramas without them being in that line. Mainly because I feel like I always joke a lot with Cyrus, saying that I feel like we accept way more than we would morally for Chinese dramas in their wuxias and the things that they commit in their dramas, the amount of murder in theirs, the amount of things
It's
that
like
happened.
they're just like, yeah.
For like the most stupidest reasons, like they're done, like they're gone, like immediately. You're like, oh, cool. They weren't worth that. We didn't like that person
We
anyways. Like
they needed to be gone anyway.
we side with the protagonist antagonist, you know. And so,
Like
like I said, I feel like a
that was
lot
something.
gets left out, or we kind of don't care as much for them because that's kind of just a typically you're conditioned to those in
Mhm.
wuxias because like the setting's different. I think it's also because it's fantasy. You kind of have like that mindset there, like this is a different world versus a lot of other series where it's based in our world. Like,
Yeah.
and so I think we're kind of prepared for that, and that's why we kind of ignore the amount of red flags that come out of wuxias.
If we're being honest, 98% of the cast of any Busha or Shensha you will watch is Marley Gray. Like,
It's just how like culture be for those.
like you may be asking, what's that remaining 2%? One of it is the irredeemable villains, and the final 1% are the precious babies who have never done anything wrong, nor that will they ever.
Oh my god, there's a few of those I can think of from series that I absolutely love because they're so cute. Like, oh my god.
So many.
But no, for those series, most of them are really great. But moving out of those, because that's just typically their setups, you have like morally great characters and like Tan from Manner of Death.
Manner of Death.
Like Tan
Honestly,
really obsessive. Really obsessive. He went about all of his control methods way wrong with Dr. Bun.
worse in the book.
Like,
The book is great,
oh, book is
but
great.
Tan
A
is
lot worse.
more crazy in the book than as he's presented in
I
the
think
show.
what's crazy to me is that he kidnaps him in the book, in the first one, and then gets repercussions where Bun loses all trust in Tan, and it took him a while to get him back. And then in fucking book 2, he does the same shit again, knowing the outcome. And it's just like, my dude. I mean, did he have character growth in book 2? Yes, but it was still like, I need you to fucking chill. Why are you out here? I know you want him to be safe. I know you mean well. That's where your morally gray conscience comes back because he did all of it purposely to try to keep Dr. Bun safe. Like he didn't do it to confine him for any reason. And like this man, like I get what he was doing was to save Dr. Bun and was to keep him safe. But for starters, Dr. Bun is easy to lose trust in. Like if you like the moment you do something like that, he's like done. And he is a very much a control freak. That is also something you learn about his character is he likes to be control. He doesn't often let Tan be in control. And that was something Tan had to learn in terms of their relationship. And so when he does it the second time, this man knew damn well that Bun was gonna be mad at him and he was not gonna be okay that he had been kidnapped again against his will. And it was kind of funny. Dr. Bunn end up still having trust in him after the second attempt? Yes, but to be fair, 10 almost got his butt killed. So, I'm so sorry. Spoilers for anyone who hasn't read the books. I just realized those were spoilers, and I'm so sorry. But, like, it made Dr. Bunn be like, you know, I'm mad at you, but I'm not that mad at you. But on the other hand, it also brought communication in them. So, like, that was his growth. It was his communication and talking to Bunn about things when he felt like things were going to be unsafe. But, like, he was a morally great character, badly, in Men or
Again,
Death.
more so in the book, in the novels, than in the series. But, like, the point still stands.
Like, the point still stands, my dude. Like, you still kidnapped him twice. Like, I get your efforts. I applaud you because of it being a good reason, but I don't applaud you because it was still kidnapped. Like, the man was still held against his will because of what was that. But so he's an example. What's another one?
One of my personal favorite examples of morally great characters come from like Not Me's little gang, because like they committed so many crimes, but it was all in the name of social justice.
Was it? I'm just kidding.
A little
It
bit
was.
of personal grudges, a little bit of a personal grudge, but mostly
Had some personal
it was
grudges, for sure.
mostly Sean was definitely full of personal grudges, and Black hated everyone.
Black was just a hateful person, man. This is why Todd tried to kill him. Like, I'm sorry. like, no hate to Black, because Todd is a pain in the booty, okay? Like, he was, I don't think he was a morally great character. I think this man was straight up Black, okay? Like, no, I'm just kidding.
So Black was also just Black.
Black was... At least he tried to save his brother. At least he was mad at his brother at first and told him to get out of his life and stop pretending to be him. And I don't care what kind of relationship you were building with your man, get out. He's like, not in my body, not when people think it was me. But when it came down to it, he was there. Yeah, I bet he was mad about that. Man took on his identity. Like, he literally
took his piercings.
And he took it because of Todd, the person who practically put Black in the hospital to begin with. Made him unconscious to begin with. So, that's wild on its own. That whole gang had some questionable, morally gray actions.
They did recently accomplish one of their goals of marriage equality in Thailand. So props to them for that.
They did achieve that, because in the story they were still trying to achieve it, and then now it is official in Thailand. Same-sex marriage, for sure. And for the win, thank God. Oh my God. I do miss the fight, and that was a really good scene in the series, but I'm glad they don't have to do that in real life anymore.
Yes. Finally, our third focus is audience reaction. This is where we highlight the significance in understanding the impression of morally great characters.
I hope by now y'all have a better understanding of morally great characters if you didn't already have an impression of them to begin with, and that you're able to curate your own standpoint of morally great characters. But back to our description of morally great characters, to what we've already previously stated, technically, is that it is so important to understand morally great characters in order for them to even be those characters, because I honestly would debate that a morally great character is only in the perspective of how someone views that character. Because like, there could be people who are going to want to argue some of our examples of morally great characters, and you're free to do that. But in our standpoint, they are morally great characters, and that's what I'm trying to explain, is that it's the understanding of the viewer, of the reader, whatever situation we're looking at, for a morally great character to exist, to a certain degree, because if you don't have that understanding of their combining their context, their backstory, the storyline, anything that relates to them specifically, then you're not going to want to put them, like I said before, on that pedestal and debate which side they should be placed in that spectrum, black or white, that makes them that gray morally, that gray character. And so the significance is huge here.
And I feel like we've gotten better with them over the years, but I feel like even now, sometimes they're hard to get right because it's finding that balance of, yes, what they're doing on a surface level is wrong, but finding the balance of like motivation, past experiences, like that like reasoning that makes them choose to make the decisions that they do is really important. In the grand scheme of things, when it comes to audience perception of morally gray characters, it's less about the audience as a whole and more so about each individual member of that audience and them coming to their own conclusion about how they feel about these characters and what drives them to be the way they are and make the decisions that they do. And I think it's really important to have conversations about how these characters impact us as individuals instead of just focusing on the audience and public opinion as a whole.
Now that we've broken everything down, now it's time to put it all together. In this segment, we'll share our thoughts on the morally gray characters as a full constellation and reflect on its total impact.
I think we've made it pretty clear throughout this entire episode that like we really appreciate morally gray characters and like what
They're that
they
worldly
insinuate.
perspective.
Yes.
They're the worldly perspective to a storyline. And honestly, they probably exist in all stories. Because, like we said in the statement
Mhm.
before, which I think is kind of like a new resolution. I don't know if that's the right word. Um,
Revelation.
revelation. It's like a new revelation. And really, after having talked about this conversation, you kind of realize that great characters kind of do exist in every story. Like you said, it's a
Yeah.
matter of how you perceived that character. Which is crazy considering I struggled so hard to find examples, but you were like, here's all of these examples. And now I see why it was so easy to make those examples. And I don't think I'm gonna struggle again in the future because it's something I'm just gonna think about and be like, "Nah." Now, again, it depends on how extreme the character is with how prominent they are of a great character. Um, unless they're total green flags, because there are some green flags out there. Oh my god. Or total red flags. There are those two highly debated ones. Very big in the community too. But I'm sorry. You were saying a second ago?
So like a loop. The little, like our little ending piece back to an earlier point in the discussion that I just remembered. Is like how characters that like I would like find complete red flags. Someone in a community will debate like, no, they're morally gray, and that's fine. Um, like specific example that I like thought about was Shuyong from The Untamed, because
Mm,
like that man did not have to cause that much destruction because
because of his
one
pinky.
guy because ran over his pinky.
The man got his pinky ran over and he was like, I'm gonna hate everyone else in the world. Like oof.
Like
He was
I've
some people
seen
actually like him though. So
I've seen
to
so
each their
many
own.
discussions about like how he was just a misunderstood, and I'm like, are we sure about that? He was pretty clear.
It was pretty clear for his reasoning, all because of a little pinky. Like, yeah, like I said, again, that's to each their own to how you perceived a character. And in most cases, I think even the people who that do side on him on his good, the thing he was on the good side is that's still morally gray on its own because
Mhm.
there's got to be something I would assume in their head that is like just favoriting the that he has to be good over his bad negative actions because they're highly aware of the negative actions, because he is a strong
Yeah.
one. He's one that's outright absolutely has that negative, that those actions that are can highly be debated in the community for this type of series, because it's so bizarre. It's wild. It's really out there, and therefore he definitely falls into that very harshly. Interesting character that you brought. That's not who I expected you to have said. I'm not gonna say who you said because that one might have been a better example. I don't know. That's a giant fandom right there that you might have just made mad, but that's okay. I was thinking of a different fandom that would have been triggered having brought them up, but we ain't bringing him up either. So
That's a can of worms I don't want to open.
yet you open the MXTX can of worms.
You know, if you want to fight me in the comments, I'll fight back.
Don't do that. Don't do that, Cyrus. Don't do it.
I got opinions I'm allowed to have.
That's the whole point of this, is the opinions. Okay.
Overall, morally gray characters like add so much depth to a story. Like we've mentioned a couple times, I don't think it's possible to have a story without a single morally gray character, because any character is going to have to make decisions in a story, and the implication of making a decision is that there are multiple choices that a person can make, and no one is going to make the same choice for the same reason. I think that's important to recognize in media and in the real world with people around you.
Great way to bring back the worldview thing I was saying about morally gray characters. Because
You're
that's essentially
welcome.
what
I
I was
got
saying,
you.
is they bring back that that mindset that the world is gray, not black and white. And even though we try to believe in a black and white world. And just like that, the constellation is complete. We thank you for joining us for this episode of Stars Align Dramas and Dreams podcast, where we meet amongst the stars that illuminate the love stories that light up our universe and connect us all.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, and share your stardust and thoughts with us. We'd love to hear your comments, favorite moments, or suggestions for what we should explore next.
You can connect with us in the comments or through our socials, as well as our email that are linked in the description. Let's keep the conversation going under the stars.
Until next time, keep dreaming, keep listening, and remember, love always shines brightest in the cosmos.